and I am here today to answer the question, how to make duck confit. This is a really good lesson for you to have if you have any interest whatsoever in good, non-fatty kind of duck meat that's tender. People are always complaining about duck that it's fatty and tough or whatever it is, and this is the answer to that question. This, of course, is a long-standing traditional preparation that goes back to the province of Périgord in France, and this is a process of preserving duck. Now, why would anyone want to preserve duck? Let's address that first so you understand why it's being made this way. During the season, when the ducks and geese were ready to be slaughtered, what they did in France was they would preserve and cure them and store them in fat in or not in a refrigerator, depending on when this happened to have been. Because before those refrigerators, they used to store it in fat for up to a month at room temperature and still eat it. Because bacteria has a very difficult time growing in the density of fat, which is where the duck legs were stored after they were cured, cooked. So this process then, you could eat the duck over the course of 6 months after the slaughter season, and that's kind of how this all came to pass. So the definition of confit would be to preserve, okay? Confiture is another word that is often used when making jams and jellies in France, and it's just another word for preserves, okay? So we're going to start out by telling you what I did to 2 duck legs that I have here that I took off of this duck 2 days ago and set to cure. They are seasoned with salt, pepper, sugar, garlic, and thyme, and I put a weight on them. I season them heavily now with all of those things, and I put a weight on them and put it in the refrigerator for 2 days. This is why they will be able to be kept longer in the refrigerator stored, because they were cured first. So the curing process is part of the preserving process. Without the curing process, you miss the flavor or the ability for longer term storage, okay? So I'm going to start out by showing you how to bone the duck. And in this particular lesson, you're going to learn how to debone the duck, how to remove the fat from the duck, and then how to render the duck fat, so you make your own duck fat that we're going to ultimately, in this lesson, cook the duck legs in the duck fat, okay? So let's start with how to take the legs off, because the leg of the duck is what's usually used to make the confit. Typically, the breast is not used. You can use the breast, but it's not common. I've seen it done before. I've even done it myself a couple of times. But the leg is the tastiest part when it's treated this way, okay? So let's begin by showing you how to take the duck legs off the duck. So we have, what I have here is about a 5-pound duck, all right? So these legs come off very easily. This is built just like a chicken, actually, okay? So you just make an incision here. You're pulling the duck leg as you're going along. Peeling it back, there's the joint. I just popped it. Boom, the duck leg is off. Same thing on the other side. I'm pulling the duck leg as I cut. I just popped the joint again here. Comes right off, okay? Now the breast, how to remove the breast from the carcass of the duck. First, excess fat comes off there. Right here, the top of the backbone, you make an incision on both sides. So there's the backbone. There's half a breast and a half a breast. So we're going to end up with 2 half breasts instead of 1 whole breast, okay? Then, right down here where the wishbone is, you cut around the wishbone on both sides. See, there's your wishbone right here. I just made an incision around it on both sides. Now, the same way I removed the duck legs, I'm holding back, peeling, scraping a little bit here, but I'm pulling the meat off so I don't cut into the breast. You see there? So there's 1/2. That was easy. And here's the other half. I'm just going to do the same thing from another angle, which I hope you can see what I'm doing, but it's kind of hard, but I think you got the idea. And there's the other breast. Now, in terms of the rest of the duck fat, we're going to take all the excess fat off the duck. There's a few little spots in here, because at the end of this particular video tape right now, we're going to set this duck fat to render, and it's going to take an hour, maybe up to 2 hours, depending on how high I have the fire on for the rendering process. And then we're going to come back to braise the duck. So this is a long time elapsed formula here that I'm showing you today. So there you go. I've got just about all the excess fat off of this duck. See how I'm taking it right off the back? Duck fat is not something you can necessarily go out and buy. So we got one pile of fat there, and that's one duck carcass. This, of course, makes great brown duck sauce, and you would always keep these and use them for that. And real quick, since we have the other duck that I cured the legs with earlier, I'm going to quickly bone this one out again too, so you can see me do this breast one more time. Again, incision on each side of the backbone, then cut the excess fat off so it's not in your way. Then I'm once again going around both sides of the wishbone, peeling, holding the breast and pulling it a little bit as I'm slicing away the connecting tissues to the carcass. And there is a half breast, and here comes the other half breast. Pretty easy. If you think of this along the lines of a chicken, it's pretty much just like a chicken. All right, so there's our breasts, and once again, I'm going to take all the fat off of this duck like I did the other one. And I'm going to show you how to season these two duck legs here in a minute, after I get the fat off of this, and tell you how to store the duck legs for that 2-day curing process prior to cooking. This is such a wonderful recipe to know how to make, and you're really going to enjoy it once you actually get it in your mouth and you eat it and you find out all the different uses for the duck confit. Okay, so one more thing now. We're going to get the excess fat that's off the breasts also, because that's all going to be part of the rendering process. And 2 more. But you want to be careful about taking too much fat off, because we're going to, in another lesson of this salad class itself, we're going to do how to render duck breast and slice it and grill it to put on a salad. So one of the reasons you don't want to trim too much fat off is you need this fat on, because we're going to render these also in a different lesson. So putting those aside, but I thought it's worth mentioning to you that you don't take too much fat off, because you don't want so much fat off on this side that you're exposing the breast. Because when we're cooking this later, we're going to want it to be medium rare. We don't want the breast getting cooked, so the skin will help protect us from overcooking the duck breast a little bit. Okay, so there's the breast, and now I have a little bit of extra fat on the legs also here. And we want to be careful you don't trim too closely on the duck legs either, because in the final analysis, after your duck is cooked and braised and you want to serve it and you go to crisp it up, you want to make sure you have skin. You don't want it cooked when it's finished cooking, having the skin all pulled up and you're kind of missing part of the skin. So there'll be some shrinkage when you cook it, so you want to be careful not to over trim the duck leg itself, okay, of the excess fat. Okay, we're all set now. Now I'm going to take you right to how to season the duck for the 2-day curing process. Salt heavily. Let's do this here. Let's put it right in the pan that we're we're going to store it in, so I don't make a mess all over the cutting board here. As long as Richard tells me that you can still see what I'm doing and it's in the pan. So, heavy salt, both sides. Pepper, both sides. I always say to people when they're seasoning food on one side, I always say, well, are people going to only eat one side? So you want to make sure you season both sides of everything. And some thyme. I'm using dried thyme, which works fine. And sugar. Not as much sugar as the salt, but still you're doing this fairly liberally. When this is all said and done, I'm going to add even more salt to the skin side of the duck before we put a weight on it and put it in the walk-in or your refrigerator, that is, to cure. So then it's garlic. You get a little bit liberal with the garlic. So what you see here now is the duck that's been seasoned with salt, pepper, sugar, thyme, and garlic. And now I'm going to hit the top of the skin with more salt. Now to store it, you put a weight on it. So in this case, I'll just put another pan. And I would probably put about 10 pounds, 12 pounds, 15 pounds on this. Set it in your refrigerator for 2 days. No less than 36 hours. Okay, so there's the curing of the duck process. And later, after this fat is rendered, and this time-elapse video completes itself, you're going to see me cook this in the fat that we render, and then we're going to do a small finishing process on it later. Right now, let's get the fat cut up and in a pot to render. And I want to talk to you about the two different rendering processes that there are. One is with water, and one's without water. First, let's get the fat cut up a little bit smaller. You can also put it in a food processor if you want to chop it up really small. The smaller it is, the faster it renders. And of course, after you cook this fat, and it does render, in the end, you will have what we call cracklings of duck skin left that you can make and eat. Which happens all the time. This duck fat, of course, can be used for making scrambled eggs or French fries or anything else. So it's one of those high tolerance fats like olive oil or goose fat. So once you have your duck fat, you can use it over and over again for all different kinds of things. Okay, so once you cook the duck legs in it, now you still have the fat. So, alright, so I don't know what I've got here. I probably have, I'm pushing about 2 pounds of fat. And I'm going to put a couple of cups of water in there. And I'm going to set it on the stove. And I'm going to put it on high. And then I'm going to put it down to low to medium for like a little longer term cooking. Now this is the way to render the fat with the water. If you want to render it without water, which you can, there's 2 ways of doing it. You just put it right in a saute pan, put it on low, and just let the fat cook. And as it renders, you remove the fat so the fat is not cooking in the fat during the rendering process. Did you get that now? 2 ways to render it. One, put water in it and boil it, simmer it for a long period of time until all the fat becomes clear, almost. And the other way is no water, low temperature, and more of a wide saute pan. Oh, that's it. All right, so I'm going to come back in about an hour. We're going to time-elapse this part of it now. And when fat is rendered, I'll let you know how long it took, and then we will proceed to cook the duck legs in the fat to continue this. So I'll be back in about an hour right now. All right, the duck confit fat that has been rendering for 2 hours. I have added probably a quart of water slowly over the course of time. And you see what I have in here now. I have a bunch of things ready to be made into cracklings. at a later date. And then I have all this duck fat here. Now, I didn't think I had quite enough duck fat to submerge the duck legs in here. So what I did is I added about 3/4 of a cup of lard to this. And you do that if you need a little bit of supplement for your duck fat, okay? So here's the fat. There's just about no water in it now at all. It's all evaporated because during that rendering process, only the water disappears, okay? So I'm going to strain it into the pan that we're actually, see what I got left in here now? I'm going to strain it into the pan that we're actually going to cook the duck legs in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add certain flavoring agents to the fat now that are going to give the duck leg itself the kind of flavor that you're looking for. Here's my idea of the flavor that you're looking for. Whole garlic cloves, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, depends. Cinnamon sticks. Star anise, which is that anisette dried anise plant, which is just, how would they say it? Simply marvelous. But anyway, there's your star anise. And I know I'm not a comedian. I just threw that in there for fun. All right, so star anise and then some cloves and a few bay leaves. Okay? Now, oh, and a few black peppercorns. I'm sorry. Now, I have the duck legs that I cured for the 2 days. And I'm going to put them in the fat. And they are submerged in the fat when I don't tilt the pot. Okay? And the other thing that's going to happen is while they're cooking, they're going to render their own fat into the fat. So you end up with more fat than you started when you're actually braising the duck legs. Okay? So I'm going to put a lid on this. And I'm going to put it in a 275-degree oven, 300. If you think you're in a hurry, you can put it in a 3/4, 3 1/4. And I'm going to cook them until the meat falls away from the bone. But I'm not going to cook it so much so that it's falling off the bone. You want to be able to pick the duck leg up and do things with it when the time actually comes for you to serve it to someone, okay? So this is another step. The first step, of course, was boning the duck, skinning the duck, rendering the fat. Now, cooking the duck legs in the fat is this step. And I'm going to put it in the oven now. I have the oven set for 275 right now with a lid on it, okay? And I'm going to come back, and so like I told you, I would tell you how long it took to render the fat. It was 2 hours by the time it was rendered enough. I thought it was rendered enough. So this should probably take about 2 hours also. So I'm going to come back and I'll give you an exact time for what it took in that size container with the lid at 275. Because the variation changes. If you're doing 10 duck legs in a bigger pot at 300, it's going to take a little longer. The key here, which is what I will show you later, is knowing when it's done by testing it. And I'm going to show you how to test it exactly when we come back in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it is. But it's going to show up like right now in a minute. So I'll see you in 2.5 hours right now. All right, it's been 1 hour and 40 minutes that the duck has been braising in the oven in its own fat. And it is absolutely done. It is absolutely gorgeous. And everyone around this pot of duck wants to eat this right now. So I'm going to give you an example of how to test it when it's done so you'll know when to take it out. See, it's a little bit brown. So what you're looking for here is the meat pulling away off. Tender. See how that's like coming apart there now? But you don't want to cook more than that, so that's perfect. Okay? Now, how do we pot it? And what do I mean by pot it? What I mean by pot it is, what we're making here is preserved for long-term use braised duck legs, okay? Traditionally, goose and duck are put in containers and sealed in this fat, which is what I'm going to do and put this away. So when it's time for you to take the duck out later, you can leave it. I'm getting you mixed up. What I need to tell you is that you can put it in your refrigerator as long as you want, up to 6 months average, okay? But if you're going to keep it in your refrigerator that long, one of the things you have to make sure you do is that you don't leave any of the duck exposed outside of the fat. So here's the pot that I'm going to use for the potted duck, okay? I'm going to put the legs in there. See, I got them trapped down in the bottom of the pot, okay? Now I'm going to take this delicious duck fat, pardon the expression, that's flavored with the anise and the cinnamon, the bay leaves, the cloves, black peppercorns, and garlic. I'm going to strain it right over the pot. It's cooled off a little bit. I took this out of the oven a little while ago. So it's completely covered. And that's it right there. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it into the refrigerator, and whenever I want some duck confit for a salad, and in this salad class, I have a lesson with a salad that does utilize the duck confit in it. So that's part of the reason why we're doing the duck in the salad class. So there you have it. This is a really special formula, and I'm glad I got a chance to show it to you. Enjoy it. You're going to love it when you eat it.